Well, I think this is an extremely valuable conference at this time. For one thing, because of what Justice Abella, who's a Supreme Court of Canada justice and is actually a child of refugees herself, had said it's what you stand up for. And jurists need to stand up for the law, not just in terms of procedural, but in terms of substantive democracy. And I think there are some universal values to be learned. First of all, incitement always leads or very often precedes genocide. So the importance of curtailing incitement, demonization as a very common characteristic of incitement, which in turn facilitates violence. We've seen it most recently in Rwanda and elsewhere, so dehumanizing victims who then become more prone to sustaining acts of violence. And so on the one hand, I'm saying words can create tremendous damage and pave the way to genocide. On the other hand, refraining from speaking is just as dangerous. Another principle that we learn is apathy. Right? So genocides, if we're talking about preventing genocides, those who are the targets of genocide are often the most vulnerable in society, the most unpopular, whether they're unpopular to begin with or become more so after having been demonized. Their voice is not necessarily heard. And if good people, all that it takes for evil to prevail, as is the famous quote, is for good people to do nothing, and I paraphrase, for good people to say nothing. So the other crucial lesson that I think this conference, the universal lesson that this conference brings to bear, is the need to dispel apathy, for us to be constantly vigilant and to speak out against the demonization, against incitement. And ultimately, that's the way of preventing genocide, which does not occur overnight, but is really an incremental process, as Gregory Stanton would say. The universal lessons that are reiterated here at this conference, one of which is preventing incitement. The other is the importance of speaking out. Apathy is just as dangerous as hate speech. All that it takes for evil to prevail, as the adage says, is for good people to do nothing. So we need to maintain a robust democracy, speak out and protect the vulnerable, prevent the vulnerable from being demonized. On the internet, it's very difficult for people, because of a lack of editorial oversight, to distinguish between verifiable truths and lies, which can be racist lies, which can be hateful lies. And these are the sort of things that, to me, are alarming. And I think education is crucial for individuals to begin to distinguish between what is accurate and what is perhaps racist propaganda. There's a more immediate concern of words leading to violence. So there was, in the media, we saw that there was a scandal on one of the campuses, actually my alma mater, of individuals being encouraged by a tweet to punch a certain category of persons. And that is, if you ask, what makes me angry, because this is where racism, demonization, moves to potential violence. And we've seen in other parts of the world that social media incitement can lead to very real, very concrete violence. And I think that with power comes responsibility, and social media platforms need to address these calls to violence most immediately as violating their terms of use. I was overjoyed to see that Google itself defined hate speech and was giving a commitment to, in fact, enforcing its terms of use and limiting expressions of hate speech on particularly its advertiser sites and so on. I think this is a tremendous step forward. The recognition that hate speech is an ill, that allowing hate speech unbridled has the effect not of more speech, but of silencing others. And so I think that with power comes responsibility, and platforms do have that responsibility. So those are steps to be taken. Responding to complaints, taking complaints seriously. And this is true not only for platforms, but for the authorities. If a woman, as was the case recently in Montreal, says, here were these inappropriate pictures posted on me on a social network, police, can you do something? These complaints need to be taken seriously. The normative frameworks are there. It's about bringing the law to the internet. It's about bringing the law to the internet through interpretation, through enforcement. There's a concern, I think, with algorithms or, say, outsourced parties determining what is appropriate for online content and what is not. So I think that's something that needs to be addressed. Who is going to do this monitoring, right? So I say hate speech should be limited. Platforms are saying, yes, we're going to go ahead and limit it. But I think we need to have some oversight as to how that's being done. judges have trouble balancing between the values of equality and free speech and limits on free speech, all the more so for private actors. So there needs to be accountability and transparency in the how that's being done. It definitely needs to be done. There's a recognition that it needs to be done. The question goes to how.